Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Traska Commuter 38. This watch is available from traskawatch.com for €627. Traska are a well-established microbrand based in America, and the Commuter is available in two versions, 36 and 38mm respectively. It's also available in date and no date versions. The date version is powered by the Miyota Caliber 9015 and the no date version is powered by the Miyota Caliber 9039 respectively. The Commuter is available in four colour options: slate black, sterling silver, oxblood red and Adriatic blue. Of the four colour options, I think this sterling silver version is the best looking. So firstly, let's look at the genuine leather travel case that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a travel case which is protected by a cardboard box and this black cardboard sleeve one removes. And I'll remove the lid to the box, which is a snug fit. And as you can see, inside we have the genuine leather travel case. So, very aesthetically pleasing. We have the Traska emblem embossed, flawless stitching around the perimeter, nice matte grained finish to the leather, and I'm pleased to see genuine leather used rather than PU leather. Traska deserve credit here because this is a mid-tier piece at €627, and they could have taken the less expensive option, the default option of a plastic or cardboard watch box. But as you can see, this is genuine leather rather than PU leather, and the interior has a contrasting suede leather effect in grey, and inside we also have this foam piece which has a suede finish to it, and this is a pad that you put in between the case back and the clasp on the bracelet, and that prevents the bracelet and the clasp rubbing against the case back and scuffing and scratching it when the watch is in transit in this travel case. Stainless steel popper, very nicely finished, flawless stitching to it, very aesthetically pleasing, and a lovely scent to the genuine leather. So one also gets this leaflet which details the operation of the movement used, which is the Miyota Caliber 9039 automatic, and as I've detailed, the date version is powered by the Caliber 9015 automatic, and on the reverse it details the terms and conditions of the warranty. Now usually microbrands within the mid-tier only have a 1 or 2 year warranty, and again I want to give due credit to Traska because this Commuter 38 is covered by a 3-year international warranty, which really is exceptional. So with regards to the dimensions, we have a 38.5mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 46mm, a thickness of 10.8mm and a lug width of 20mm. The Oyster style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the 2-button push clasp, and as you can see, the 2-button push clasp is signed to high standard with high definition engraving of the Traska emblem. Beautiful luster to the body of the clasp. Now I want to give due credit to Traska again because this is made entirely from 316L grade stainless steel, which is hardened steel. So to put this into perspective, this entire watch, the bezel, the head of the piece, the case back, the bracelet and the clasp are all made from hardened 316L grade stainless steel, which has a hardness rating of 1200 HV. HV stands for hardness Vickers. So I'll put that into perspective for you. Standard 316L grade stainless steel has a hardness rating typically of 200 HV, 200 hardness Vickers. This is rated to 1200 hardness Vickers. The benefit of this being hardened steel rather than standard 316L grade stainless steel is this is more scratch resistant, so it's not going to suffer from the usual scuffs and scratches on the bracelet and clasp that is often the case with standard 316L. So 200 HV is standard, this is 1200 HV. So incredibly good specification at this price point of €627. So we have a double dome sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, boxed top hat profile to the double dome sapphire crystal, and as you can see, absolutely gorgeous. It gives the piece a vintage aesthetic, rather like an acrylic domed crystal, but because it's double domed rather than single domed, we don't get the characteristic distortion and magnification effect of an acrylic crystal or a single domed crystal which is flat on the underside. And the clear AR coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices and the silver mirror polished hands. As you can see, the hands are correctly proportioned. The minute hand extends all the way to the black minute ticks on the chapter ring, and the second hand also extends to the second ticks on the chapter ring. So the handset is very well proportioned and very well finished. The mirror polishing is outstanding. I love the silver sunburst dial, and of the 4 options I've detailed, this is the best colour option. And one detail I really like about this piece, if you look at the bezel, often it's the case with brands, they either mirror polish the bezel or they use circular brushed satin finishing. But Trasca have opted for something different. It actually has a sunburst finish to the bezel, and that complements the sunburst finish to the dial. So the dial and the bezel both matched. They have that radial sunburst finish to the bezel, which refracts the light rather than just using circular brushed satin finishing or mirror polishing. And the edge, which has a nice chamfer to it, is mirror polished. So it's a very well executed bezel, and I love the way the sunburst finish to it catches the light. So BGW9 Super Luminova on the hands and the applied indices, which I'll test in the Lume test. And this weighs 137 grams with all the links in the Oyster style bracelet. I'm pleased to see female pivoted end links used rather than male end links. They've made the correct decision because the female pivoted end links articulate very smoothly, and they allow for a better fit because they pull the end link in the Oyster style bracelet closer to the wrist. Screw down crown is coin edge finished, mirror polished domed cap to it, as you can see, and beautifully embossed with a Trasca emblem to a high standard. Nice chamfer to it, no sharp edges, no burrs, but it is correctly proportioned. It feels grippy and tactile due to the large coin edge finishing to it. So let's test the screw down crown execution. The screw down crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 meters, which is good specification for a daily wear piece. Absolutely silky smooth. This is sublime screw down crown execution. It really is Rolex level, and Trasca deserve credit for this because this is the kind of screw down crown execution one would expect with a high tier piece costing in excess of €5,000. But this is a mid tier piece costing €627, and it really is exceptional screw down crown execution. So silky smooth. Now, this is powered by the Miyota 9039 automatic, and they've made the correct decision because the date version uses the 9015, and that has 2 click positions on the crown, one for setting the date, one for hacking the movement and setting the time. But this is a no date movement. The 9039 is the no date version of the 9015, and therefore we only have 1 click position on the crown, which hacks the movement and sets the time. So when unscrewing it, in the first position, we can manually wind the Miyota Caliber 9039 to its maximum 42-hour power reserve. Feels very light and smooth to manually wind. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up. Feels a lot smoother than the Seiko NH35A, which has a firmer resistance to it. The Miyota 9000 series of calibers are premium, and one can feel the quality. They feel a lot smoother than the 8000 series, such as the 8215. The 9039 is one of my personal favourites because it's an absolute pleasure. It just feels really smooth to manually wind. In terms of quality, I regard it as equal in quality to the Sellita SW200-1 and the ETA 2824-2 respectively. That is the kind of premium grade we're looking at. Pulling it out to the first click position is the final click. It hacks the movement. If you look at the second hand, you can see it's now stopped dead. So it's possible to set the time precisely to the second. Nice light resistance to the Miyota Caliber 9039. It feels very smooth, minimal friction to the gearing, and it feels smooth both clockwise and anti-clockwise. There's an immediate response. If you look at the minute hand, when I rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, the minute hand immediately moves. There's no back play in the gearing, so it feels like a nice tight movement. It feels very similar to the SW200-1 and the ETA 2824-2, and I really like that feeling of the gearing being solid, no back play, and very smooth. So pushing it back in has got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You'll see the second hand begins to sweep around the dial once again. So let's test screwing it back down. Instant thread pickup. This is perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the crown tube. The threads mesh instantly, they pick up instantly, and it's just an absolute pleasure. This is Rolex level quality control and finishing and tolerances to this screw down crown. The threads are a perfect match. Just silky smooth, sublime screw down crown execution, 100 meters of hermetic seal. It's outstanding. So I'll show you the clasp. Beautiful luster to the hardened steel, as you can see. Really fine quality to the grained satin finishing, as you can see. They longitudinally brush it, but you can see how fine the brushing is. This is something that other mid-tier brands don't get correct. Often the grained finish to the satin finishing is just not as fine. But look at the luster. It's Rolex level. Absolutely gorgeous. And that contrasts very well with the flawless mirror polishing to the flanks, as you can see. Two screws to secure the quick adjust mechanism inside, so very good quality control. No sharp edges, no burrs. Nice heavy gaze to the hardened 316L grade stainless steel, no sharp corners to it. Good foam resistance to the 2-button push triggers. Now, one detail I really like about Trasca watches, such as this Commuter, is the quality of the finishing. Pelage finishing on the interior of the solid stainless steel clasp, as you can see. Now, needless to say, the hinge pins are a good tight fit. They're not sloppy, the tolerances are good. But just look at the pelage finishing. They could have used the cost-cutting measure to cut production costs and just brush satin finishing it longitudinally. But they've pelage finished it. And one doesn't see pelage finishing at this price point usually. It usually comes on high-tier pieces costing in excess of €10,000. And one sees pelage finishing on movements, for example, but not on solid milled stainless steel clasps. They've even put pelage finishing on the right-hand portion of the underside. So it's just absolutely gorgeous to see that pelage finishing, the way it catches the light. And they deserve full credit for this level of finishing. I absolutely love it. Just gorgeous to look at. Another detail I really like about the clasp is the quick adjust system. As you can see, it's sprung loaded, so I'll show you the adjustment. You press in the trigger, which is heavily sprung loaded, and that deploys it. So there's a full 10mm of micro adjustment. Now, each of the micro adjustments has a nice positive click. It's a loud audible click and a good solid ratcheting mechanism, as you can see. And it pushes back in, and it deploys very smoothly. When you push in the trigger, which is heavily sprung loaded, it deploys it. And this works very well. It's one of the better quick adjustment class I've seen, and I really like the mechanism because it feels solid. It doesn't accidentally deploy, and it's a good tight fit. So I'll just show you clicking it back in again. I love the loud audible clicks. It feels really solid. There's a very heavy spring-loaded action to it, and the mechanism is very solid. It doesn't feel sloppy. It feels nice and tight. It's good tolerances to the mechanism inside the body, and I really like the firm action to the trigger, because you've really got to push it in hard with your index finger or thumb in order to get it to deploy, so you're not going to accidentally deploy the quick adjustment when it's on wrist. And as you can see, it's got two flat head screws either side of the flanks, and that means it's secure, so the mechanism isn't going to accidentally come loose and deploy. And I really like the action of it, because it's got really loud audible clicks that feel very solid. One can feel each heavy ratcheting notch. So it's perfect. 10mm of micro adjustment is excellent for a daily wear piece. I'll show you the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel, concentric CNC lathe tool machining to the centre, which refracts the light beautifully, as you can see. And the circumference is engraved with the specification of the Commuter 38. And the milled slots are very well finished, no sharp edges, no burrs, so it doesn't rub and irritate the wrist. Now, one detail I really like about this Commuter 38 in particular is the flat profile to the stainless steel caseback. Just look how flat that is. It's not a bubble back caseback. And again, this is something that Trasca deserve credit for. They have got the caseback correct. Often mid-tier micro brands have bubble back casebacks in order to clear the rotor, because this isn't a manual wind or quartz piece. This is powered by the Miyota Caliber 9039 automatic, so it has a rotor. But they've made the correct decision, because it's an incredibly low profile flat caseback, and the thickness of this piece is only 10.8mm. And bear in mind, it does have a box top hat double dome sapphire crystal, which does add significant thickness to the head of the piece, but it's got a perfectly flat caseback. So the benefit of that is it fits very snugly to the wrist, and it feels very comfortable, because the centre section isn't engraved, only the circumference with the specification. The flat concentric CNC lathe tool machining to it means it's very smooth and comfortable against the wrist. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Nice positive click to the 2-button push clasp. I really like the luster of the hardened steel, as you can see. Just absolutely gorgeous the way it catches the light. Now, as you can see, the benefit of the flat stainless steel case back, look how snug the undercut to the flanks fits to the wrist. This fits very close to the wrist. It's an incredibly low profile piece at only 10.8mm, even though it has a tall boxed top hat double dome sapphire crystal, which adds 2mm of thickness to the head of the piece. They've made the correct decision by using a boxed top hat crystal because it gives the piece a vintage aesthetic, as does the holes in the lugs, and I really like that. It looks like a piece from the 1960s or 1970s with that boxed top hat crystal. Just absolutely gorgeous, but I absolutely love the fit. Nice curved profile to the undercut, and the tips of the lugs have a minimal gap above between the wrist. And if you look at the end link, which is female pivoted, you can see the female pivoted end link, how it pulls the end link in the bracelet snug to the wrist. What we're looking at here is correct decision after correct decision, because had they used male end links, it would have extended the 46mm lug to lug measurement. And as I've detailed, if you have a smaller 6 to 7-inch wrist, the 36mm version will fit you to perfection. 46mm is close to perfection. 48 I regard as the perfect lug to lug measurement for all wrist sizes, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 or a 7 to 8-inch wrist respectively. At 46, it's a compact case, it's a short lug to lug, but you can see with the benefits of the female pivoted end link, it means the case pulls very close to the wrist and the bracelet doesn't have a large gap. If they had used male end links, this would have stuck out, it would have had a gap. But you can see just how close the bracelet and the tips of the lugs are to the wrist. So it gives wrist presence at 38.5, but it's also a compact piece because it's only 46mm long and only 10.8mm thick. So the flat case back versus using a bubble back case back is the correct decision. Another thing they've got correct is the taper of the Oyster style bracelet. 20 at the lugs down to 16 at the 2-button push clasp. And as you can see, I haven't sized the bracelet. Now this is on its minimum on the micro adjustment, which allows 10mm of extension. And even on the minimum setting, I can easily slide an index finger underneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. So this will fit up to an 8.5-inch wrist with no difficulties whatsoever. And even I, with an 8-inch wrist, would remove 2 links from the bracelet to get the perfect fit. So wrist presence is good, 38.5, and the lug to lug measurement is compact at 46. I love the snug fit. Taper is perfection, 20 to 16. And I love the proportions of the clasp. It's not too large and bulky despite having to house the micro adjustment mechanism. They've got the length right, the width right, and also the height. And the luster of it is just absolutely gorgeous, and the luster of the hardened steel bracelet. And I really like the fact it's 1200 HV hardness rating, far more hard and scratch resistant than standard grade 316L grade stainless steel. Just absolutely gorgeous to look at. I love the silver sunburst dial, the silver mirror polished indices and hands, and I love the sunburst finishing to the bezel. Again, they made the correct decision by not using a mirror polished bezel, because the sunburst brushed satin finishing to it really gives it a vintage aesthetic. It's just gorgeous. I love the mirror polished bevels, which mark the transition between the brushed satin finished tops to the lugs and the mirror polished flanks. Beautiful taper. So it's a great looking piece from every angle. Right, so let's do a loom test and we'll see how the loom performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So this uses BGW9 Superloom Nova. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to its absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, this has not disappointed. This has actually exceeded my expectations. We're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers of BGW9 on the applied indices and the baton hands, as you can see. Perfect colour tone match. The blue tone of the BGW9 on the applied indices and the baton hands are a perfect blue match. And one can clearly see that this is 5 to 6 layers on the indices and 5 to 6 layers on the hands. So needless to say, it's going to glow continually, very brightly, without fading. And this is an example to other brands of how to get this correct. Often mid-tier micro brands, they get this incorrect because they apply a different number of layers to the indices and the hands. For example, 3 to 4 layers on the hands and 5 to 6 layers on the indices. And then you get a colour tone mismatch in the superluminova. It appears darker or lighter on the hands or indices. But by applying 5 to 6 layers on both the indices and the handset, you get the perfect blue match. In both daylight conditions, the lume appears white, and then when you're looking at it in the dark, you can see the blue tone perfectly matches. The exciter in the BGW9 glows brightly on both the indices and the hands to the same level. Absolutely gorgeous. In terms of performance, the BGW9 here looks very similar to Rolex Chromalights. It's got that characteristic blue tone to the BGW9, and they've made the correct decision. They could have used C3 superluminova, but I think for a silver sunburst dial, I think the blue tone of BGW9 really works well. Perfect symmetry to the dial, and this is something I really like about the no date version, the lack of the date complication at 6 o'clock. The date version of the Commuter 38 has a date complication at 6, and it does look good. It's framed in silver, which matches the applied indices, but I actually prefer the perfect symmetry of the no date version because we don't have the deleted 6 o'clock index on the dial due to the date complication. We've got that perfect symmetry and just the double applied indices at 12 o'clock. So the double applied indices at 12 remind me of the Oyster Perpetual 41, which is a watch I previously owned and reviewed on my channel. But I like this symmetry of all the other indices being single. Only at 12 o'clock we have double indices, and the orientation is very good. Proportion of the minute hand is good, and one can clearly differentiate between the baton hour hand and the baton minute hand because they're clearly different lengths. Outstanding, as you can see. It's not fading whatsoever. Very bright, very strong performance from the exciter in the BGW9. Right, so let's discuss the movement used because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So, as I've detailed in my previous reviews, the Miyota Caliber 9039 and 9015 are my personal favourite Miyota calibers. The Miyota 9000 series of movements are premium grade. So I regard the 9039 used in this piece and the 9015 used in the no-date version of the Commuter 38 as equal in quality to the ETA 2824-2 and the Sellita SW200-1 respectively. That is the grade of movement we're looking at. The benefit of using a Miyota 9000 series movement is they are quieter than the Miyota 8000 series, such as the 8215 and the 8315, which have a noisy rotor. The rotor on this 9000 series piece, 9039, is quiet. So it's bidirectional, but it sounds quieter when it's rotating and winding the movement. It doesn't have noisy ball bearings, which is good. So it has 24 joules. It runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which is used for complications. And the stated accuracy is -10 to +30 seconds per day. So a rather wide accuracy range, -10 to +30. However, I'm pleased to report that the 9039 can be well regulated to much better than -10 to +30. This one is running consistently at +2 seconds per day, which is actually chronometer grade accuracy. +2 from a 9039 is outstanding. So again, credit to Traska because they are well regulating the Miyota calibers they're using, the 9039 in this piece, the no-date version, and the 9015 used in the date version respectively. 42 hours is very good power reserve, and one thing I really like about the 9039, the reason why it's my favourite Miyota caliber, is it's the no-date version of the 9015, so the architecture of both movements is the same. But however, the 9039 has a low stack height for the hands on the cannon pinion. So the benefit of it being a low profile version of the 9015 is the low stack height means the double dome sapphire crystal can sit closer to the cannon pinion. Usually with automatic movements, and I'll give you an example, the Seiko NH35A, for example, you'll all be familiar with, that has a tall stack height of the hands on the cannon pinion. And because of the tall height of the cannon pinion and the stack height, it means that often crystals, such as double dome sapphire crystals, they need to have a deep rehort beneath the crystal, between the sapphire crystal and the dial, to give adequate clearance. And that's why often NH35A powered pieces often have a deep stainless steel rehorts beneath the crystal, and the dial is sunk deep within the head of the piece because the cannon pinion needs adequate clearance. Otherwise, the second hand would foul the underside of the sapphire crystal. But this uses the Miyota 9039, which is a low profile version of the 9015. It's a no-date version, but also low profile. And you can see how close the box top hat crystal sits to the dial. This has a very shallow rehort. It has a shallower stainless steel rehort beneath the crystal than it would do if it used the Miyota 9015. This cannon pinion is lower and the hand stack height is lower. So the benefit of that is the clarity, because like a Rolex, which has a very low rehort, and also the dial sits very close to the underside of the sapphire crystal on an Oyster Perpetual 41, for example. This also has a very low profile stainless steel rehort beneath the sapphire crystal. The dial sits very close to the underside of the crystal, so therefore one gets perfect legibility. The clarity is good. And of course, the benefit of the clear AR coating is it reduces the glare and the reflective nature of the metallic sunburst dial and the mirror polished indices and hands. So although it's a shiny reflective piece and the 2mm thick box top hat crystal is a thick crystal, one gets that perfect clarity. Even tilting the piece at an oblique angle, due to the lack of depth on the rehort and how close the dial sits to the crystal, you can see the clarity is outstanding. Symmetry of the dial is good, proportion of the handset is good, so the legibility, the readability of it is good. Now if you look closely at the quality of the high definition printing of the Traska emblem, the Traska logo and automatic, you can see the black printing on the dial is perfection personified. The minute ticks and the squares for the hour indexes on the chapter ring are printed to Rolex level. It's just absolutely incredible. Often it's the case with mid-tier brands. The printing is blurred, it's not high definition and crisp, and the font isn't fine enough. They use thick font. With this, it's got a very fine font to it. It's the kind of fonts one would expect to see on a Tudor, Rolex or Omega piece. That is the kind of crisp printing we're looking at. High definition minute ticks, and also the logo, the emblem and the automatic is all done to a very high definition standard. So the quality of the printing on the dial is very good. The quality of the finishing to the mirror polished applied indices and the baton hands is high tier level. It's the kind of finishing one would expect on a Rolex Oyster Perpetual 41. But bear in mind, this isn't a high tier piece. It's €627, so they deserve credit because the dial execution is outstanding. It is high tier level on a mid-tier price point piece. So are there any negatives to the watch? None whatsoever. This is the perfect daily wear piece. Just look at the luster of the Oyster style bracelet, the hardened steel Oyster style links. It's just beautiful. This really is Rolex level finishing. The luster of the hardened steel, which is 1200 HV hardness rating, is gorgeous. The mirror polishing to the flanks is done to perfection. No sharp edges, no burrs. The links don't pull arm hair. They articulate very smoothly, no stiff links. The bracelet doesn't rattle. The screw pins are a nice tight fit, so the tolerances and the quality control are outstanding. The female pivoted end links are solid 316L grade hardened steel. Nice tight fit to the head of the piece. The articulation is very smooth, and the benefit is they pull very snugly underneath the head of the piece, as per Tudor Black Bay 58. That is the kind of female pivoted end links we're looking at. Very smooth articulation, no additional play. It's an example to other micro brands in the mid-tier of how to get bracelet finishing correct. Doesn't pull arm hair, no sharp edges to the flanks, and no burrs. Every link is finished to perfection. The clasp is also finished to a very high standard, beautiful luster and flawless mirror polishing, nice mirror polished bevel. One detail I really like about the head of the piece is the use of holes in the lugs. As you can see, the flanks have holes drilled in, and this means that it's easy to exchange the bracelet for a strap because you can press the spring bars externally using a spring bar tool, and it gives the watch a real vintage aesthetic because watches from the 1960s and 70s had holes in the lugs, and it makes changing the bracelet very easy. One doesn't have to use a spring bar tool internally inside the solid end links. You can simply depress the spring bar externally, and that makes it very easy to remove the solid end links from the head of the piece and change the bracelet for a strap. So I wouldn't change anything about this piece. Traska have created the perfect daily wear piece. The Commuter 38 really is perfection personified. No negatives whatsoever, very strong specification. The Miyota 9039 is a premium grade of movement, and I like that they didn't just use the 9015, which they used on the date version, on the no date version, because then it would have a phantom date setting position. They deserve credit for using the 9039 to delete the phantom date setting position on the no date version of the commuter. So I love everything about it. I like this watch so much, in fact, I have decided to add it to my own personal collection, and that is the highest compliment I can pay a watch. I have reviewed hundreds of watches on my channel. This is one of the best watches I have reviewed, and at €627, it is both excellent quality and excellent value, so I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Traska Commuter 38. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.